Hello there friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. So the Kenobi series is finally over now and we've been covering it for weeks, and I haven't really given you guys what my true thoughts on the series are, and that's because I wanted to wait for things to end. And so today we'll be covering what I think is good about this series, what is bad, and what is really ugly. So there'll be plenty of things here for you guys to digest and plenty of things for you guys to disagree with. The Kenobi series was only 6 episodes long, and each one of those episodes cost $25 million. That's $10 million more per episode than The Mandalorian. And although I couldn't find out how much of that budget actually went directly into Ewan McGregor's pockets, I'm imagining that a pretty large chunk did. Ewan McGregor is far more talented than the usual leading actors that gets cast in Star Wars films, so it's always a treat seeing him. He was always a bright spot during the prequel era, and his acting abilities allowed him to deliver great performances even when the script was limited and the director was absent. George Lucas was always terrible at directing dialogue.
The closer I get to you, the worse it gets. The thought of not being with you, I can't breathe.
In Kenobi, Ewan McGregor continued to show us why they based the whole show around his character. Ewan's ability to convey emotions and care for the people and world around him are what make us like Obi Wan in the first place. He is a hero in the classical sense and represents the qualities that the Jedi Order should have championed from the very beginning. And more importantly, for those of us who grew up in the prequel era, seeing Ewan McGregor return as Kenobi has a huge nostalgia factor, which might make it impossible for some of us to even critique this series objectively. But I'll try. We also see the return of many Star Wars favorites. Jimmy Smits returns as Bail Organa and once again does a great job. He has some truly benevolent energy about him when he's on screen. It's almost as if he's been waiting since his prequels to finally deliver these lines to young Leia. He really does make the most out of his limited time on screen. As does Owen Lars, who once again was portrayed by Joel Edgerton. Owen Lars was actually one of Joel Edgerton's first well-known roles. In the limited time we see him on screen, we get to see how tough of an individual Owen Lars actually is. Luke Skywalker couldn't be placed in better hands. Anakin Skywalker, the few limited times we actually get to see him, brings us nicely back to the prequel era. I wish we could have had a few more scenes with him from that time period, but the limited ones we did get were very impactful. Darth Vader is also portrayed quite well in this series. There is a genuine sense of fear and power surrounding him that is consistent with the Rogue One film. I especially like the scene where Vader starts just murdering random people in that village on Mapuzo in order to draw Obi Wan Kenobi out of hiding. The Path organization also introduces some good performances to the series, from Indira Varma as Tala Durith, Kamali Nanjiani as Haja, and O'Shea Jackson Jr. as Quallen Roken. I like the idea of seeing more of these types of organizations which predate and will one day inspire the Rebel Alliance. I really enjoyed returning to Alderaan as well and seeing it from a different angle, and the world of Daiyu was visually a real treat. I'm just so happy that this entire show wasn't placed on Tatooine. The third sister turned out to be far more interesting than we originally thought. She wasn't just some angry and completely out of control Inquisitor. Beneath all of that hatred was a complicated character whose behavior only made sense if you understood her past. The real reason why Reva acts childish and immature throughout the series is because she was that Padawan we see in the beginning of the movie, and she seems to have never been able to progress past that horrible moment when Anakin slaughtered all of her friends. And lastly, let's talk about Deborah Chow. She's a mostly unknown director. For most Star Wars fans, you might remember her from the first season of the Mandalorian TV series. She directed Chapter 3, The Sin, and Chapter 7, The Reckoning, 2 of the more important episodes from that season in my opinion. Her strengths as a director can be seen in the Kenobi series, where she does a great job with emotional storytelling. Whether it's the scenes between Leia and Bail Organa, or Obi-Wan and Leia, or even Obi-Wan and Vader, this is where Chow's direction really stands out. She really does understand the wide range of emotions that us human beings can have. Now, let me repeat this fact again, guys. This show cost $25 million per episode for 6 episodes, so that's $150 million in total. This is by far the most expensive show that Disney Plus has created so far. It costs almost as much as a film like Rogue One or Solo, which both were in the $250,000 range when it comes to budget. But the reality is the Obi Wan Kenobi series is around 4 to 5 hours long, which is twice as long as your normal feature film. Plus, Kenobi has the added benefit of using ILM's new stagecraft tech. Not only does this drastically speed up the shooting process and lower the cost of the crew, it also decreases the amount of crew and travel and production one needs to do for a movie. This technology has literally changed how movie making is done, and it will save ILM and Disney a lot of money in the future. But this tech also has some limitations. It's heavily reliant on CGI backgrounds and not practical effects, and it is very noticeable in the Kenobi series, specifically with the animation of the ships. It just looks completely terrible, almost like a 90s era sci-fi channel show with very janky CGI. Compare that shot to this shot from The Mandalorian of this Imperial Gazanti class cruiser, and it's not even comparable. Maybe The Mandalorian did use a mixture of models and CGI, but something is clearly wrong with how the Kenobi series approached VFX and CGI. Everything in space in the series just felt wrong, especially the movement and animation of the ships. And it's not just the ships that look bad. I would argue that most of the action sequences in this TV series were just terrible. I think this is where Deborah Chow's biggest weakness comes in. Let me take a look at this chase with young Leia and Flea and his goons. It was laughably bad, as was this rooftop scramble on Dayu. Why is Reva using parkour? She's a whirlwind of dark side energy. She should be able to literally fly across the rooftops and jump off buildings with relative ease. And then you have the Battle of Jabin. By the way to take a beloved and important Legends world and bring it back into canon and basically use none of that background detail at all. But anyway, the Battle of Jabin was terrible. I know Star Wars isn't about tactics, but it just makes no sense that people would stand their ground out in the open and exchange fire with a bunch of other people less than 10 meters away from them. It's 2020, guys. It's no longer the 80s. Audiences have seen enough stuff that they will know immediately that this makes no sense. You gotta have higher standards. Now, the action is so bad that it kind of struck me as strange because Chow's episodes in The Mandalorian were both very action heavy and, in my opinion, pretty well done. I'm not looking for like milsim kind of realism here. I'm just looking for enjoyable action. Although I'm not even sure this was even Deborah Chow's idea. This seems more like a Jon Favreau thing. I mean, you guys know how much he loves Iron Man and guys covered in metal with big guns. But these are just surface level issues that the Kenobi TV series suffers from. What's far more worrying is just the lack of focus the story has in general. But that's why you don't focus on these larger moments where the audience probably knows what's going to happen anyway. There's no fear when Obi Wan Kenobi goes up against Darth Vader because we know that Kenobi survives and will eventually go on a motorcycle trip the long way around the world. We also know that Princess Leia will grow up and Flea will stop kidnapping children and eventually become one of the best bass players in the galaxy. Oh, that's right, he died in the series. I mean, even when Reva supposedly kills the Grand Inquisitor, who we all knew would be in a later series, it just confused everyone, or made people think that Disney screwed up, which probably is even worse. What Disney should have done instead was focus more on the internal turmoil that Darth Vader and Obi Wan Kenobi both had probably concerning their relationship with one another. This is by far the most intriguing part of this story. And I also think this is where Deborah Chow could really use her strengths to create something truly special. The story should have been more minimalistic and focused on these two individuals and how they're dealing with the post-Order 66 fallout. Instead, the show kind of feels like a Disney park attraction with way too many characters, too many scenes, and too many ideas and meddling producers. Basically, this is your typical Disney screw-up, like Mulan or something. In the end, aside from Reva's interesting side story, were the Inquisitors even necessary to the plot? What about the path? What was their point again? To protect the Jedi? It kind of seemed more like the other way around. Of course, it would have been different if these parts of the story were executed well with interesting characters we actually cared about, but I would say that these scenes were carried out so poorly that there were immersion breaking at points. Look, guys, I know Star Wars is mainly for kids, and it's really up to us older fans to not be so freaking toxic and understand that aspect. And it'd be a real shame if the next generation missed out on this amazing universe. But the amount of babying and hand-holding we see in this series is classic Disney, not classic Star Wars. I mean, sure, there was episode 6 and the Ewoks, And then Lucas did try to cash in with the whole Christmas special and the, was it the Caravan of Courage? But as I was watching Kenobi, I thought about another show I was also watching that predominantly featured kids, and that's season 4 of Stranger Things. This show has everything from a kid being bullied in school after moving to a new town to awkward teenage romances. But not for 1 second was I bothered by these elements because they were executed so well. What I appreciate is good writing, pacing, casting, acting, all those things. Stranger Things simply just felt like the better show. There are restrictions here too that prevent the show from being too adult, but the boundaries are hidden carefully and don't really take away from the story even a little bit. My theory here is that Netflix most likely gave Duffer Brothers complete free reign, which is why Stranger Things feels like a work of an auteur, as in one talented creative mind had a vision and everything was directed towards that vision. Now obviously the Duffer Brothers are identical twins, but I'm pretty sure identical twins share souls. Not certain though, not certain. This is really the biggest problem with the Disney model. You'll notice that outside of Jon Favreau, they don't really hire extremely talented and well-established directors to make movies. I mean, sure, they asked Ron Howard to come fix Solo, but the reality is Disney is an extremely cheap company and they care a lot about money, and so they hire a lot of these inexperienced directors for a very low price, and they're also very malleable because they are new to the industry, and so your higher-ups, your producers, your money people can have far more control over the end product, which of course is always a bad thing. When you have too many non-creatives getting involved with story elements and inexperienced directors who lack a strong vision, the result is something completely uninspired and generic, like the Kenobi TV series. What Disney really needs is an auteur. I mean, heck, they don't even have to be a huge Star Wars fan. They just have to be good at making movies. I mean, you know, that's not much to ask for. Guys, there's nothing I hate more about this country than the culture war that is just consuming everything. And most people I meet on the street, my friends, people we talk to randomly, they also hate the culture war. I mean, we have serious economic and political issues that are threatening the future of our country and our people. Now more than ever, we need to come together and discard our differences and try to figure out a way out of this mess, the economic, social, and political upheaval we're having right now. But instead, we're just getting more tribal and stupid for some reason. Perhaps we used to be more ignorant of each other's thoughts. Back in the day, people in red states had no idea what people in the blue states were thinking, and people in the blue states had no idea what people in the red states were thinking, and both people in the blue and red states were unfortunately bombarded by weird stories of what people in Florida were doing. But then social media came in and we just all started vomiting hot takes to everyone. These comments should have never been taken seriously, but the sheer amount of them has started just this massive cycle of bullshit. And it's drastically changed our view of how the world actually works. When in fact, people remain relatively unchanged from like 10, 20 years ago, I think. And it's making us crazy. I mean, we had New Yorkers laughing at people in Texas when their power grid failed during the winter, causing hundreds of people to die. And then we had people in Texas laughing at New Yorkers when COVID was killing hundreds of people a day at the height of the pandemic. Like, what the hell is going on? And now this culture war stuff is invading Star Wars? Like, really Star Wars? If you actually know this series, you'll know that there's no racism, there's no culture problem amongst humans. Because the main thing about Star Wars is there's all these other alien races that humanity must band together and destroy. Okay, well, that's not the real point of Star Wars, but the point is there's no issue with race and skin color in Star Wars. And as you probably know, people were posting truly horrendous and lowbrow stuff about Moses Ingram, who is just an actress. She does not decide anything. If anything, she's just happy that she got this huge, big break to be in Star Wars. I mean, even when people found out that there was going to be a black stormtrooper with Finn in The Force Awakens, the negative reactions were nowhere near as bad as what I was seeing in those first few weeks with the Kenobi series. And then on the flip side, you have these other crazy people who call anyone who criticizes Reva's character a racist. We're allowed to think that she's an average actress. It's okay to criticize people of color because they are the same as everyone else. If you really want to respect people of color, don't be weird around them. Treat them like you would anyone else. As a general rule in society, never tell someone they can or can't do something because of the color of their skin. And generally don't blow smoke up people's asses, be honest about them. These people who are ruining Star Wars are a small group of people whose voices are amplified by the nature of their loud-ass comments. I mean, the biggest offenders oftentimes comment multiple times in a video and just start crap with multiple people. Look, as a society, we are metaphorically at a moment where we just survived the plane crash and now are isolated on top of a mountain. Things are difficult because of the circumstances. The first thing we need to do is to isolate these crazy, obnoxious people who are fighting this culture war, and we need to cannibalize them. Okay, maybe not that, but we should banish them. Why are we letting this small group of people who clearly are unhappy with their own lives and are dealing with some crazy personal stuff and just want to hurt everyone else around them, dictating the course of our discussion and what we care about and what we talk about? It's completely crazy. I meet a lot of you fans out there in the real world, and I've never met a bad Star Wars fan. I've never met an asshole or a bad person who acts like they do in the comments section. It is ridiculous. Let's not let a few idiots completely ruin the fandom and completely ruin our view of humanity. They're obviously free to say whatever the hell they want. It is a free country, but we are also allowed to ignore them and not pay any attention. Have some discipline. Don't get triggered by these people, because that is ultimately what they want. They want to be heard. The reality is things are nowhere near as bad as they seem on social media or in the news. The average Star Wars fan just wants to watch some Star Wars and then take care of their family, go to work. It's really simple and relatable stuff. We used to remember that. So would I recommend Obi Wan Kenobi? I would say no, unless you are a very avid Star Wars fan and you're gonna watch everything anyway. This is like a below average show. It's worse than Book of Boba Fett, which I actually kind of liked in some ways. I think the direction was really bad here. The story was bad. The CGI was bad. The only thing that saved it was all probably like fan service stuff, which shouldn't be counted into whether a series is objectively good or bad, in my opinion. Like, I love Ewan McGregor. I love Obi Wan Kenobi. He's the only Jedi that I actually do like. So, you know, even with all my bias, I still can't really recommend this TV series, unfortunately. Well, guys, let me know in the comment section below what you guys think about all this. Don't forget to subscribe, hit that notification button down below, and, you know, next time you see someone doing the culture war thing, cannibalize them. No, don't do that. Anyway, guys, my name is Alan, reminding you that my allegiance is to the Republic, to democracy.